If you were hoping for a quiet Saturday and Sunday to lower your blood pressure a little, like I was, this was not your weekend. Because breaking news alert after breaking news alert had at least my numbers gone off the charts. To start, we're seeing a coronavirus spike right here in Massachusetts, with more than 1,100 confirmed COVID cases this weekend alone. Overall, the 7-day average is up 23% from 2 weeks ago. Thankfully, though, the state's positivity rate is still quite low at just under 1%. But in some Midwestern states, they're seeing rates above 25%, according to an analysis from Reuters. Still, the president is pressing forward, urging schools across the country to get kids back in person and businesses to reopen. And he announced today his administration is sending out millions of rapid tests over the coming weeks to make that all happen.
100 million rapid point-of-care tests will be given to states and territories to support efforts to reopen their economies and schools immediately and fast as they can.
Kind of makes you wonder where those tests have been for the last 6 months we've been asking for them, while the president was telling us we were already testing too much. And while this is welcome news, even if it is months late, I should note Trump also used the term China virus more times than I could count in that announcement. And no one gave an exact timeline on when or where all those tests would go. But among those at the announcement today was Dr. Scott Atlas, Trump's new coronavirus task force advisor, who an NBC News staffer apparently overheard CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield trashing over the weekend, with Redfield reportedly telling colleagues he's concerned Atlas is pushing the president to spread misinformation about the pandemic and that, quote, everything he says is false. Maybe Dr. Redfield should consider sharing that with all of us. Then, of course, there was the New York Times investigation into Trump's tax returns, showing he paid just $750 in federal income taxes in 2016 and nothing at all for 10 of the 15 years before that, because he claimed hundreds of millions of dollars in losses, plus millions in write-offs for hair, makeup, and so-called consulting fees, more than $700,000 of which reportedly went to his daughter Ivanka. We also learned this weekend that Kentucky's only black female state lawmaker and several others protesting the response to the killing of Breonna Taylor were arrested and accused of Class D felonies. That's the same level of offense as the lone officer charged following the killing of Breonna Taylor. And again, his charges actually have nothing at all to do with Taylor, but rather a neighbor. And last, at least for now, but certainly not least, Trump officially nominated his pick to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. That, of course, is Amy Coney Barrett.
She is a woman of unparalleled achievement, towering intellect, sterling credentials, and unyielding loyalty to the Constitution.
If confirmed, the 48-year-old appeals court judge and Notre Dame Law School professor, who once clerked for the late Justice Antonin Scalia, would shift the court to a 6-3 conservative majority. Republicans say they're on track for a full vote on the nomination the week before the election. And while many Democrats have complained they don't think the president should get to pick a replacement at all, since Obama wasn't able to do so for Scalia in 2016, they find the choice of Barrett especially rankling.
Just about everything that America believes in and stands for when it comes to issues like health care and labor rights and LGBTQ rights and women's rights. Judge Barrett stands against all of that.
I'm joined now by Jennifer Braceras. Jennifer's columnist and senior fellow with the Independent Women's Forum, Boston University law professor and Supreme Court scholar Jay Wexler, who clerked for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. At the same time, Amy Coney Barrett clerked for Antonin Scalia. Renée Landers is a Suffolk professor and constitutional law expert. Good to see all three of you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, can I start with you? And can we start at the end and work backwards so there's no suspense? Jennifer, starting with you, does Coney Barrett deserve to be confirmed by the Senate?
I think she does. What do you mean by deserve? She's qualified. The president has the power to appoint. The Senate has the power to confirm. The Republicans have the votes. And she is unquestionably well qualified. So, yes, she deserves to be confirmed by those standards.
By deserved, I mean, should they vote yes on the merits? Should she be on the Supreme Court of the United States, other than the fact that purely the numbers are there?
Yes, on the merits, she's an extremely eminent person with a distinguished record of scholarship and a distinguished record on the bench, and she absolutely is an excellent pick for the United States Supreme Court.
Renee, do you agree with that or no?
I don't think I quite agree with that. I think that the objection that I have to her, putting aside the circumstances and the delay, the change in policies, from the last year of Obama's term. I think that she has views that would interpret the Constitution as if it were still 1789 or 1800 or something. And I just think that the country has advanced to the point where we don't need a person who would set us back in time in constitutional interpretation on the Supreme Court.
So does that mean senators should vote no, Renee?
Yes.
And Jay, after you tell us when you were a mere lad what you were like and what she was like, you can break the tie if you choose.
I won't go into what I was like, but I do remember Amy well. We worked together 2 years in a row, actually, once at the lower court, and then when she clerked for Scalia and I clerked for Justice Ginsburg. I'm going to break the tie in favor of voting no, though. I did, of course, support Judge Coney when she was up for nomination or could have been nominated for Judge Kavanaugh, for the seat that Justice Kavanaugh ended up taking.
So what happened?
Well, I think this is an entirely different situation. I think this process is a disgrace. I think that the Senate should not be pushing this through. Judge Coney Barrett has been nominated while Justice Ginsburg, an American hero, is still not even in the ground. The hypocrisy of the Senate Majority Leader McConnell is just nauseating. And I think that our president is using Judge Barrett for political gains in a really awful way that's going to tear the country apart. And she is participating.
So, Jay, I just want to be clear. You think she's qualified to be on the court, but she should not be on the court because of the surrounding circumstances. Is that a fair summary?
I think that's a fair summary. Yeah, there's nothing.
Well, I'd like to address
Renee, Jennifer, can I get to you in a second? I want to get back to Renee for 1 minute. Barack Obama, who you cited before, once said elections have consequences. And seizing on what Jay said a minute ago, putting aside the fact that you may not like Trump's policies and putting aside the hypocrisy of the Senate Republicans, a la the Merrick Garland thing, she's a conservative. Trump was elected. He's entitled to pick a conservative. Do you think this rises to Ted Kennedy's saying in Bork's America? Are you saying in Barrett's America we're all going to be at risk?
I am saying that. I think that she has views that are really outside the mainstream, and that really her originalism wants us to view the Constitution through the lens of 1800 or when it was adopted. And I have one example of that.
Please, what's one example of that?
She dissented in a case where the Seventh Circuit upheld a rule that a convicted felon should not get a license to have a firearm. And her reasoning for dissenting was that he wasn't a violent felon, it was a financial crime, and that we should only apply that ban on firearms to violent crimes, and that the ban would be okay for civic rights like voting and serving on juries. And I think that's just a very, very, 18th century view of the world and of the rights that people should have.
Arguably even going further than Scalia, I should say, her mentor, who ultimately decides states could make decisions about gun limitation in the Heller case that gave individuals the right to bear arms. Jennifer, I interrupted you. Take it away.
No, I understand that Renee disagrees with Judge Barrett on that decision, and certainly the senators should question her about that and the rest of her record. I have no question about that. The question is not whether any of us here agree or disagree with opinions she had. The question is whether she's in the mainstream of conservative jurisprudence,
right.
and she certainly is. I want to also get back in response to what was said before about the circumstances. Let's be clear. Mitch McConnell and Chuck Grassley and Orrin Hatch when he was in the Congress, they all voted for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it's not because Ruth Bader Ginsburg was more qualified than Amy Coney Barrett. And it's not because they agreed with her judicial philosophy or every opinion that she ever issued. It's because they believed that when the United States Senate and the presidency are held by the same party, you vote for the person that the president sends you if they are qualified. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg was highly qualified, as is Amy Coney Barrett.
Jennifer, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg was nominated today, you think she'd get 97 votes?
Unfortunately, I don't think she'd get 97 votes, but I think she'd get a lot of Republican votes. Lindsey Graham voted for Elena Kagan. He voted for Sonia Sotomayor. And the truly principled Republicans, yes, would vote for a Democratic nominee in that situation. The Merrick Garland
Jay, if I may bring you into this conversation, it seems, and I'm going to summarize what I think both Renee and Jennifer agree upon, and if they disagree, they'll tell me in a minute, that you are entitled to pick someone as president who shares your ideological bent, but you're not entitled to be on the Supreme Court if you're, to use Jennifer's words, you're out of the mainstream. Renee suggested that she is out of the mainstream. Is she?
Well, from what I've read of her, I don't think she's out of the conservative mainstream. Like that, to me, that's unfortunate that the conservative mainstream is the way it is. But I do think, from what I know about her, that she's in the mainstream. She might be towards the right of the mainstream, but I don't think she's out there.
So, Jay, let me understand your position. Is your position that if a senator doesn't like the politics of the president and, by extension, his nominees, it's okay to vote against that nominee?
No, that's not my point. It's not just that the senators might disagree with Donald Trump's policies. It's my objection is specifically to the process that is going on right now, where somebody is being nominated a week after a national icon and hero has died, and who's still up, not even in the ground yet, and we're already nominating somebody new. We're pushing that through for electoral reasons, and it's just a disgrace.
Jennifer, it seems to me that – I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would just say that my view of the mainstream is the mainstream of the arc of constitutional law in recent decades, not the mainstream of, either the right or the left values. And I would say that she definitely is outside the arc of on many issues, not all issues, I would agree, of that arc of constitutional values.
I want to bring up an issue that I think is the central issue, which we haven't really talked about much, is beyond some of the issues you've raised, particularly the issues, Jay, you raised about the whole process, is will she honor precedent on a whole variety of things that matter a lot to people. You've all heard this a million times. Here is Amy Coney Barrett writing in the Texas Law Review in 2013. If anything, the public response to controversial cases like Roe v. Wade reflects public rejection of the proposition that stare decisis precedent can declare a permanent victor in a divisive constitutional struggle rather than desire that precedent remain forever unchanging. Court watchers embrace the possibility of overruling, even if they may want it to be the exception rather than the rule. Jennifer, I'm assuming, considering how smart she is, if history is any guide, she will say to the senators, of course I will honor a precedent, except, I don't know, in the most extreme circumstances or some such language. Doesn't this Law Review article, in her own words, cause serious concern about whether she'll honor that commitment?
No, because nobody agrees to uphold a precedent no matter what under any circumstances. No justice would do that. And in fact, if we did uphold precedent in all circumstances, no matter what, Korematsu would be law of the land and Dred Scott would be law of the land. So it is not always the case that just because something has been a certain way for a long time means that it was rightly decided and that there's a reliance interest on that precedent. I will say that in the rest of that article, Judge Barrett goes on to talk about the reliance interest and how that is one very important factor in determining whether stare decisis applies. So it's not the case that she would overturn something just because she disagrees with it or just because she felt it was wrongly decided at the time. She's simply saying that you have to look at all of the circumstances.
Yeah, Jay, Laura Bazelon wrote in the New York Times that Barrett, according to her, will take a, quote, wrecking ball to smash Roe v. Wade. Obviously, Jennifer doesn't agree. Do you?
I don't know about a wrecking ball. Maybe one of those, those small balls, sort of smash a little bit. That would be more. That's what I would expect. I wouldn't expect a wrecking ball, but I would not be at all surprised to see little dents be made in that precedent. Sure.
And what do you mean by that? You mean limitations? You mean limitations on the right to access to abortion, Louisiana kinds of things, Texas kinds of things, those kinds of cases, rather than outright repeal. Is that where you're going?
That's probably right. I would guess that there will be, again, a process of incremental pulling away from Roe in situations like the ones you mentioned. Yeah.
I want to address all three of you.
I was just going to say she's already written a dissent, that indicates that that's the direction in which she would move.
Justice Roberts, I think he was speaking at a law school here, I think New England Law, I'm not sure, 6 or 7 years ago, who said he was concerned about the politicization of the confirmation process. Starting with you, Jay, and then we'll go around. It seems to me, whether you're on the side of Barrett or one's a no voter on Barrett, if anything, I thought Merrick Garland was going to be the breaking point. If this doesn't unleash a torrent of politicization of what should be the most trusted court in the land, nothing else will. Do you share those fears or no?
Oh, my goodness. I fear so much what's going to happen as a result of this process. People are so angry. They were almost boiling over after Garland, and this is just really is putting everybody on the edge, over the edge. And if Joe Biden becomes the president, I don't know what's going to happen, but I imagine the conservative or the sort of small change might be 18-year term limits, or we might see a 11-person Supreme Court. I don't know what we're going to see, but it's going to get ugly.
Jennifer, I only have 30 seconds for each of you. Isn't that what's going to happen if Biden's elected and the Democrats control the Senate, which I assume most people say is not good for democracy?
There are a lot of principled Democrats, including Cory Booker, who oppose cord packing, and I would expect them to stand up and honor the promises they made not to do that. That's bad for democracy.
Why should they be honorable when the Republicans, when Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell are total frauds on Merrick Garland versus Coney Barrett?
I disagree with you on that point. The principle at play is that when the White House and the Senate are controlled by the same party, it's perfectly appropriate. And you know as well as I do that there have been 29 vacancies in an election year or lame duck session, and every single time the president has appointed. This president is
right.
No
doesn't
different.
Mean they're not hypocrites.
Not on the Supreme Court, though, necessarily.
Yes, on the Supreme Court. 29. Right. 29 Supreme Court vacancies every president fills.
But the objection is I want to agree with Jay here that this appointment is being used as a tool in the election process right now on the eve of the election, a specific judge. And I think that is what is particularly corrupting about the situation. And I totally disagree with you about the honorableness of Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham of all of that. Their own words belie that.
I got to hold this. Jay, you get the last 30 seconds to tell us what it was like for working for Justice Ginsburg.
Working for Justice Ginsburg was the professional experience of a lifetime. It was such a privilege to work for her, to work for somebody so incredibly careful, brilliant, somebody who had revolutionized the law even before she got on the bench. And it's just been a really, really sad, terrible week that just gets worse and worse.
Jay Wexler, Renée Landers, Jennifer Braceras, I really appreciate your time, all three of you. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much, you three.
Thank you.